Okay. Hello. Nice to see so many people here. This is the Micromobility Shared 2.0 panel. Where do we go from here? I'm Ali Griswold. I write a newsletter called Oversharing. I used to be a staff reporter for Quartz and Slate magazine. I tell people I only work for publications named after rocks. So my last remaining option is Rolling Stone, and then my career is over. We will let everyone introduce themselves down the panel.
All right. Hello all. My name is Yigit Kipman. I'm co-founder of Hop. Hop is a leading micromobility operator in Southeastern Europe. We currently operate in 21 cities, 3 countries. Main markets are Turkey and Greece. And we started the business in 2019, raised 2 rounds, 21 and 22, and keeping on deploying to new markets now.
And what is your favorite micromobility device?
For me, I will call e-scooters because we kept single mode on Hop, and we really worked down to the science of e-scooters. We know all the wears and tears, and when you spend a lot of time, you are kind of bound, attached to that vehicle. So
what modes of transportation did you take to get to Amsterdam?
Today I took a shared bike, and then a tram, and then a metro.
Nice.
Subway.
Very multimodal. Okay, next up we have Hal.
Hi everyone, my name's Hal Stevenson. I'm Lime's Director of Policy for UK and Ireland.
Great, very brief. What is your favorite micromobility device?
My favourite micromobility device are shared e-bikes.
Okay, and what modes did you take to get to Amsterdam?
So I took a shared e-bike to the Eurostar, then I got on the Eurostar, then I got a boat from Amsterdam Central, and then I walked to my hotel, which is right next to here.
Okay, we've got another 3-mode trip. Polina, can you introduce yourself?
Yes, hi, I'm Polina. I'm co-founder of Not. Not is making hardware devices, infrastructure for which you charge and lock micromobility bikes and scooters, and we also operate very small fleets, up to 100 devices.
What's your favorite type of device?
I love acoustic bikes, like the regular bikes.
Yeah, nice. And what modes did you take to get to Amsterdam?
I took the Eurostar from Paris, and then here I just used the Holland bike.
Yes,
very nice.
Very classic. And lastly, we have Mats.
Yes. Hello, everyone. My name is Mats André Breesth. I'm the co-founder of Surf, which is a Nordic micromobility player. And early this year, we acquired the European parts of Superpedestrian, if you know that business. So yeah, that's me.
And favorite micromobility device?
Right now, I have to say it's the Superpedestrian e-scooter.
Okay.
It's the best one there is for sure, and my favorite indeed.
Great. So that's a good transition because I like to start these panels with some fun trivia, and I have a great one for you guys. You might know that there are 20,000 Superpedestrian scooters on auction in the US right now. The auction is available till June 6th. Get your bids in. I wonder, what do you think the highest bid right now in this auction is? You get one number.
20,000, right? Okay, so $2 million?
It's broken out into separate batches. The batches are about 300 scooters each.
Okay, so the total, I think I would say $100 per scooter or 200.
Okay, so, what do you think, Hal?
If my maths was better, I wouldn't work in government relations. So could I do a per vehicle?
Oh, what do you think the internet thinks?
Yeah. I reckon £20 per scooter.
Okay. Paulina?
I'll go with $50 per scooter, 100,000.
And I know that the scooters are sold with no tech.
Yeah.
So I reckon that most of them have no bids, and that the highest bid is probably like $400 or something.
Matt's wins our trivia game. The highest bid is $300, placed for 317 scooters in Fairfax, Virginia. There are no bids on almost all of the lots, so if you are in the market for several hundred thousands of scooters, it's a bargain. Here ends the advertising portion of this panel. Okay, so the future of shared. What do we mean by the future of shared? I think it's an interesting question because, if anything, we've seen more retrenchment in this space in recent years than advancement. I've been covering this space for more than 10 years, and the past few years, especially since COVID, have been characterized by tight funding, lots of consolidation. For instance, Superpedestrian and Surf, collapsed valuations. So where do we go from here? Has micromobility been humbled? I think that's sort of a good place for us to start this conversation. And I'm going to let you start, Mats, because you did one of the acquisitions.
Yeah, so from my perspective, I think we are still very early in the game. Everyone here has been part of the industry from the early days, maybe feel like we have gone quite a distance since then. But to me, it's very, very obvious that the way we will move in cities in the future is through interconnected networks of shareable vehicles. It just makes a lot more sense than cars. It's a lot less materials going into producing them. It's a lot less energy moving them around, and they are in much more use than any personally owned vehicle. So I don't know if you guys are into finance, but you have things, they go to the moon because they have great potential, and then the market loses faith, it falls down again. And this is where I feel like we're at right now. We are in like this low point of micromobility, but it has nothing to do with the future potential, because the future potential is absolutely immense, in my opinion.
Yeah, and we were talking about financing a bit earlier. What do you think about that sort of market rise and fall theory?
For me, so the financing has been really challenging in the latest years due to the shrink in the VC ecosystem. But currently what I see from the survivors of this downfall is they worked really good on their products. They know what their customers need. They work too much on infinite loops to optimize their costs. We do similar approach. In each cycle, we are lowering costs. Month and month, every year, we are lowering our costs. And this is showing us that this business can be sustainable in the long term. I'm talking about not in 2 or 3 years, 10 years, maybe 20 years. So if you show that this business is going to be sustainable, then you can also approach to traditional ways of financing this business. It's not going to be only VC-backed private companies deploying in these fields, but you can also use bank financing, you can go for debts, some other financial instruments. And this is what's supposed to be to deploy the number of fleet that the city needs, because we should have a vehicle, one vehicle every 50 meters or so. We can't make people walk 200 meters to start a ride or after they end their ride or while moving from mode to mode. So I think that's the main challenge. We need to find a sustainable financing model for the assets.
Yeah, and how Lime obviously has spoken publicly about being profitable on an adjusted basis. What would you say quickly are some of the main factors that's helped the company get to that point?
Yeah, I think the key point to make here, and in relation to conversations around financing and how the industry has changed over the last few years, is that everything used to be about growth. It would be about demonstrating to external investors how quickly we can grow services and our ability to continue to grow into the future in order to access additional external capital to put back into that growth. You know, if I was introducing myself on this panel 2 or 3 years ago, it would have been, I work at Lime, we operate in over 300 cities across 50 countries. But now it's not the growth that matters or how we expand or the speed at which we expand. It's the unit economics of the markets we're in. And there are 2 main buckets that can sit in. Obviously, there's lots of things we can do internally in terms of the efficiency of our operations, how we make sure our vehicles are in the right place at the right time and are working when a paying customer comes up to use them. But also there's a lot we can do from an external perspective in terms of working with city partners to design and implement schemes that are actually set up for success in the long term.
Yeah, great segue. I was going to say that I feel like one way you can characterize the shift is that 5 or so years ago, the most valuable asset in micromobility was sort of the software, hardware funding. There was a lot of money going into research and optimizing your device and just having the assets to grow really fast. And now it's arguably permits and urban goodwill. So Polina, it's great we have you here because so much of Knott's model is based on like innovative ways of working with cities and really collaborating with them. Can you talk a bit about that and also how it ties into cost savings for operators?
Exactly. I'm on the other side of the mirror compared to everyone here because we bootstrapped and we made all the all the installations we made first get paid by the city. So we come to the city, and cities who realized that, okay, this kind of free floating model didn't work for them for multiple reasons, because we work a lot with the small cities as well. And that's how we grew. And for me, it's really important to make something sustainable long term is to work in the infrastructure on several points. We're talking about bike lanes, of course, here's a great example, but also the fixed infrastructure, which secures vehicles and long-term infrastructure as well. And for me, the shifting point here as well, if going back to the finance, when you have the fixed infrastructure, you can also involve the B2B sector. And because all these guys, they have employees to make a move around the city, and now they excluded from them. Like mostly in most operators, they don't talk to the business.
Yeah. So can you give us a specific example of the private sector getting involved in subsidizing that sort of model?
I can talk about, for example, we have few cities, like 5 cities exactly, where we have this model. But for instance, in Strasbourg, we have 50 stations installed. In them, 10 are installed with the city, so city paid for these stations, and then the rest are installed with the private sector, like banks, transport operator, which is not exactly private, but almost, and then harbor operator and some other companies. They just buy the station, install it on their ground. The only condition is to have the station accessible for the public, but on the private ground. So now we have to get the permit, and then all the vehicles were paid by the city.
Yeah, because parking and charging it's surprisingly expensive. I learned more about this recently because Lime put out a big report on parking in London. And correct me if I'm misquoting this, Hal, but I think it said that to install a docked parking bay with maybe some bit of build out could cost up to £3,000 per bay. Is that right?
Yeah, in terms of a non-docked painted bay.
Yeah. And what is it if it's if it's docked and it also has like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Railing,
so if you're talking like a
things.
Santander TfL Cycles docking station, that costs upwards of 100k per unit.
I mean, why is it so expensive? That's a crazy number. If we're talking about costs, like, how are we getting to £100,000?
Yeah, exactly. Well, and this is the thing, when we talk to boroughs, particularly in areas of outer London, who want more access to shared e-bikes, we're able to do a lot of the funding for the parking infrastructure anyway, but their choice is between paying £100,000 per docking station to put in place a Santander cycle scheme, or they can work with shared e-bike operators that have the ability to expand much faster and for much better value in terms of council budgets, which are obviously under strain at the moment.
But sorry, what is the main cost? Is it leasing the space to have the parking? Is it just the physical, like, trenching of the station?
Yeah, it's not something I'm close to because obviously it's not our model, but I imagine it's around the physical infrastructure. Also, those docking stations have payment methods put into them as well. They're also electrified in some areas. So yeah, there's a huge amount of complexity that goes into that design.
Yeah. And Mats and Yigit, are you more docked or dockless at this point in your models?
Full dockless currently in all the markets.
Yeah, so at the moment we mostly operate dockless markets, but we have both models in our fleet. But I do see great potential in automating how micromobility fleets work in the future. So this is also a discussion about what's going to happen going forward. And I think some keywords from the way I view it is automation in all parts of the business, including how we charge, including how scooters move in the cityscape.
Can you give a specific example?
Yeah, of course. So I'm not sure if anyone has like an automated vacuum cleaner at home. It stays in a dock and then it goes around, cleans in your apartment or house, whatever. I think if you try to be a little bit more open about how you think about a vehicle in micromobility, why can't it, for example, drive itself next to the wall if it's badly parked? Why can't I order it here if it's 200 meters away from me? Why does someone have to go to the scooter and swap the battery when it can just autonomously go to a dock from you guys? Like, this is where I see micromobility actually being integrated in a way that works for all stakeholders in the city, as well as becoming profitable. Not in just an adjusted EBITDA basis, but actually a profitable business where you can buy more scooters and scale.
I will say, having just read a lot of pages about the problem of clutter in cities, I find it hard to imagine that cities are going to be super keen for like thousands of scooters zooming around the sidewalks in an unrestricted
But I
manner.
think
But we can dream, you know?
they don't
Some
know what
and
they
stuff.
want until you deliver it to them and it meets their needs.
Yeah. So again, kind of going back to the docked versus dockless issue, this is another interesting thing in shared where a couple years ago, 5 years ago, when the sector was starting, everyone was all in on dockless. I mean, classically, we had the examples of Ofo and Mobike, the Chinese operators that had so many scooters, they turned into these massive like e-bike graveyards. And now increasingly we've seen as operators have to work more with cities that there is a preference, especially in denser areas, for a docked model. So we've almost come full circle in that sense because the original bike shares, of course, which were led by cities, were docked, and then dockless was like a new development. I wonder if this is open to anyone. If you think that dockless was a necessary intermediary step in getting back to that heavily used docked model, or if we've just been like chasing our own tail for the past 5 years.
Yeah.
And
So,
you and then Polina.
no, Polina first, please.
No, just what I want to say. Of course, I want to believe that everything will be back to dock, and I really, my firm belief is that whoever wants to use a scooter or bike can walk 200 meters. It's not a problem for a person to just walk a bit to reach the station to make it more clean, recharged, and organized. Yeah, I really think that docked model will take over, and especially because with involvement of the city, and the city has to finance the infrastructure. We cannot put the infrastructure on the back of operators because it's just not fair. If the city tomorrow says, okay, you have to leave the city and you take your docks away when you paid a lot of money to install the docks, it just wouldn't work this way.
And I think collaboration is the key. The public should think that it's not private companies, VC-backed companies' responsibility to deploy these stations around. And accessibility is the key. We need to walk at most 50 meters to get to a scooter. So if we can build a parking place once in every 100 meters, collaborating with the public, co-founding it or making it accessible for the whole neighborhood, I think it's going to be the key that we can take people out of their cars, start using micromobility for their daily needs. So collaboration is the key.
I would disagree on the idea of dockless being an intermediary step that we then reverse back from.
Hal has an advantage because I asked him this question exactly a week ago. So he's had some time to think about it.
Yeah, well, I think there should be two really simple sets of parking rules wherever you're using shared micromobility. In more central areas of cities, where there's increased density of buildings, reduced space, more footfall, it is obviously sensible for there to be more controls over where you can park. Bikes or scooters should have to be left in appropriate locations. We want a really high density so the scheme is still convenient to use and people can actually end their trip in a safe and convenient way. And then in less dense areas where there's more space, reduced footfall, so predominantly residential areas in cities, you should be able to leave your vehicle neatly to one side so that it's not obstructive, but that you can actually benefit from the convenience of being able to cycle or ride to and from your house, for example, because we know when mandatory parking rules are enforced in areas where there's not enough density of parking locations, people either ignore them or they just stop using the service. And when we're trying to deliver the types of shared and active travel targets that we need to deliver, that's not an acceptable outcome.
I'd like to add to that as well, because I fully agree with your perspective. I think it's not one or the other. I think it's a combination that's going to be what we see going forward. We need to keep in mind that without the accessibility and the convenience for the users, we are back to square one. And we need to move people over to environmentally friendly, shareable modes of transportation. And therefore, we need to have two thoughts in mind, which is make sure that the flexibility and convenience of micromobility is maintained, but improved with docked parkings where you have the ability to charge as well.
Yeah, and what else do you think operators on either side, charging or providing scooters, can do to work with cities to help transform the public realm into more friendly areas for micromobility?
So I think they need to keep on just developing the infrastructure. And you see a lot of cities now actually turning around and seeing the value and the benefits that micromobility brings to a city, because we are not in opposition to one another. We have the same goal, which is to transport people in a way that's future proof. So simple things like just changing a car park for a micromobility parking spot, as well as trying to cater to the needs of both the pedestrians in the city and operators is what we need going forward.
Is that the kind of thing, I mean, Hal, you on this a bit, where you think the company would ever put money into providing some of that infrastructure? Because obviously on the other side of this, we have lots of cities that have quite tight budgets, and they might have a wish list of things they'd like to do, but realistically can't achieve, especially in the short term. So I wonder where the private sector comes in with some of those more infrastructural developments and not just the provision of devices.
Yeah, of course. So with all of our city partners, we see ourselves as having a responsibility to provide, first and foremost, data to be able to actually locate where more parking is needed, and then funding to deliver it, because we know that local authorities have budgetary constraints, and we want to work with them to overcome those. And that type of model is much better than you'll see examples, for example, of revenue share or just annual fees that aren't necessarily going back into the development of active travel in cities. So as operators, we much prefer to be able to make direct contributions to infrastructure because it reduces costs for cities, but also it's a virtuous circle. The more parking we build, the more people are likely to use active travel, including our services, and that creates more revenue for more investment.
Anyone else?
Yeah, and I was also at like infrastructure aside. The thing I really think we need to work on is how to involve the B2B and the private sector, because, like, for example, today in France, if the company installs the bicycle sharing for just for themselves, they will get 30% in tax return, which is cool. But the employees will just have the station in the office. They will take the bike and they have to get back to this same station. And when we have the whole partnership working, private-public partnership with the different dogs, all companies involved and all operators involved, that can really work and make it cheaper for everyone, because we all use the same infrastructure and the same vehicle and profit from the sharing infrastructure.
Yeah. Do you think fundamentally that micromobility services are closer to private hire or to public transportation?
Public transportation.
Public. What do you think?
I think currently public, but in the long term there will be a shift, because as you know, when we say shared mobility, we are thinking of different form factors, and one form factor is currently being developed in a really good pace. It will be the robotaxis, and it's gonna erase the distinction between car sharing.
Yeah, but I mean more like, do you think we should be thinking of it as a public good, like an extension of public transportation, or as a luxury private option, like a taxi?
Yeah, it will be a public good, because when connected with the public transit network, it's also improving their reach, where public transport will not.
So public good.
I mean, transport is a high volume, low margin business. It has to be a public good that's used widely to be successful.
Public good.
Public good. That's why we do it.
Yeah. And so my follow-up question for that is, traditionally transportation public services lose money. So obviously it is difficult to design a public good that also makes a profit, did my mic go out? No, okay. A public good that also makes a profit, which is the goal of private companies. So I wonder, again, like, how do you balance these things? How do you create a service that functions as an extension of public transportation in collaboration with cities, which I think, as we've been discussing, is very much what the future of shared is, where we're heading, but also accomplish the very real need for a private company to make a profit? Because realistically, unless it's being subsidized by the government, like the Tube in London or any of the many like major city services, that's not a realistic operating model.
Yeah, I can share some thoughts on that. So, the basics is to create a company that makes more money than it spends. Sounds very, very simple, but I think staying lean in terms of SG&A is super important. I think the market will keep on growing as more and more people experience the convenience of micromobility.
Yeah, but do you genuinely think that it can reach a price point that is equivalent to a public transport fare?
100%.
Yeah.
We are already profitable in a lot of markets. I know that it's perfectly possible to be profitable in local markets as long as you care for them properly. I think one issue with profitability in the past was that players were scaling at all cost, not taking profitability into consideration. But if you view micromobility from a unit economics perspective, as long as you put enough effort into each and every market and enough attention, it's really not that difficult to make it a really good business. It's due to many factors. It's super easy to onboard users. People love them. Marketing is included in the business model. You retain all of your users because you create a lot of value. And from there, you can make money with micromobility isolated, but you can also add more verticals and value creation for your users when they are inside your network. So I 100% believe that micromobility is a profitable business, and I think it's strange that so many companies are not profitable.
Yeah, not to pick on you, Hal, but I say as I'm about to do it. I took a Lime bike a couple of weeks ago because my bike had a flat tire, and I think I rode it 2 miles-ish, and it cost me about £7, which was 3 times or more, 4 times what it would have cost me to take the bus. And, you know, you do that 20 times, and that's the cost of my bike that I own. So that's partly why I was thinking about it. Obviously, it's extremely popular. If you haven't been to London, everyone takes Lime bikes. But also the price point is quite high. And so, again, I wonder if you see that as like a temporary fluctuation while a lot of things are being invested in, or if that's just ultimately the way the market is going, that it has to command a higher price point for the service to work.
Yeah, of course. So what you're describing there is our pay-as-you-go pricing, which in your example is a good option for you to choose. You normally have a bike, you're saying you don't normally use Lime, therefore you want it for one trip. You're unsure whether you want to make a commitment to multiple trips. If you had used our pass pricing, the cheapest and shortest of which is $3.99 for half an hour, you could have got 50% off. And to your point around what if I did
make a poor economic decision.
Yeah. So not to pick on you.
No, I finished the ride and I was like, well, this was a failed experiment, but perhaps useful material later.
Yeah. And when you finished the trip, did you get a prompt telling you how much you could have saved by going onto a park?
I don't think I did.
Okay.
You should follow up with your marketing team on that.
And another important question, how much time did you save as compared to if you were taking the bus?
Probably a bit, but less than if I'd taken my own bike.
Yeah, that's fair enough.
Yeah. Okay. And I wonder, do you think we're in danger of over-regulation? Did I say this already? No? Okay, great. I got so distracted by the previous. Yeah, so who would like to talk about danger of over-regulation?
I'm happy to kick things off. I think the start of the micromobility industry was characterized by a complete lack of regulation, which had negative impacts in the short term. And the long-term follow-through of that is now there's been an oversteer to potential over-regulation, particularly around user experience, which impacts how many people actually want to use the service because it's convenient and something that they want to continue to use. And then also around fees. Like we were saying earlier, transport is a high-volume, low-margin industry. If you have big fees or revenue share commitments attached to schemes, because of the increased level of regulation and licensing that you have with cities, it's hard to build schemes that are financially sustainable. So what we want to do is, wherever we're operating globally, we want to work with local authorities to design and deliver schemes that deliver on their benefits, but do it in a way that can be financially sustainable in the long run. Because if you set up a scheme with a council and it's not financially sustainable, ultimately it's not going to deliver on any of the other objectives you set out to do, because it's not going to stick around in the long run.
Yeah, what does everyone else think about danger of overregulation? I think
Sorry, now it's your turn.
It depends on the market. In our home markets, where we develop the regulation with the government, we haven't seen any over-regulation. And I think it's due to the friendly approach we had with the local lawmakers. We approached them to show how much they can make money out of micromobility. What kind of burdens in the city are we taking away from the municipality? Because the time lost on traffic, all that traffic jam, they all have a cost to the local municipality, also the government-wise. So when they see the benefit of these services, they are more likely to lower the costs, so you don't pay high insurance fees, high occupation fees, etc. And that's another way to save costs and avoid over-regulation.
I think it's a question that needs to be answered on a market-to-market basis. So in some markets where you see revenue share as a model, for example, that's over-regulation in my opinion. I think, and we are getting there, that cities need also to recognize the actual value that we are creating in cities. We do need some regulation, but it has to be made in such a way that it is manageable for the businesses as well. Or else they will have to provide the service with taxpayers' money. Like we are actually here providing a service that the market loves, that meet all the needs of the cities and all of the needs for us as a human race, because we need green solutions in everything we do. And that's when it becomes strange to me when we are treated as someone who does something bad to the city, when we are actually fixing their problems. But I think it's moving in the right direction. And us as a player, we just move away if the cities don't want to work with us. We just choose a different market because there are so many markets that needs the service, and we would much rather be where we are appreciated.
Did you want to add anything, Polina?
No, it was, well, just wanted to say that cities were really spoiled by the free floaters, and it spoiled the market for many. And sometimes I have cities like 40,000 people coming to us and say, hey, can you install the infrastructure for free and then operate it? And then you can just play here. I'm like, yeah, you will have 50 vehicles, never make money off it. So you need to realize it's, again, the size of the city which will decide.
Yeah. So I think we're going to take some questions. What time is it?
It's ran out of battery.
Okay. Who has a watch with battery?
3:15.
Okay, great. Okay.
Great.
Okay, I'll repeat the question. The question was, is Lime's Ride Pass available in all jurisdictions? Because the question asker thinks that it might not exist in Vancouver. He could be wrong.
Yeah, so there should be, the Ride Pass is a universal offering. The pricing will be slightly different, but I can check in with Sonia, who leads that GR team in Canada, and come back to you.
Does anyone else have questions? Would anyone else like to bid on defunct Superpedestrian scooters in America? No. Okay. Well, that's about as it's going for them too. Okay. Does anyone have final thoughts if we have no more questions?
I can share some final thoughts.
Yeah.
So, as I mentioned initially, I think we are just at the very start of micromobility. I think this is the Nokia 3510i, which I had, which was the first Nokia with a color screen. This is where we're at right now. And in 5 to 10 years, we're all going to have iPhone scooters, which is going to be very different in the way they operate and in the way they integrate and in the way that they create value. So please stay in the industry. It's going to be great.
Let's just go down the line. Polina, what are your closing thoughts?
Yeah, I'm not saying my scooter is half full. I mean, I'm less maybe enthusiastic, and I really think that we should work more on the non-electric vehicles, like just pedal bikes, normal bikes. They deserve more in the cities to be installed, and we can see very successful models working with non-electric vehicles. And maybe just shift towards this model will be very interesting and beneficial for everyone and for the public health of them as well.
Yeah, I would say the key thing that we're talking to cities about wherever we operate is still the dominance of cars. You know, all of these conversations that we have around fee models, around regulation, around parking, the fundamental issue is there's not enough space provided for active and sustainable travel modes. But as long as with the threat and the climate goals that we're all trying to achieve, as long as that progress towards that is linear, it is inevitable that micromobility will be successful, because we need to get more people out of cars and onto more sustainable modes of transport.
I agree. Also, the technological advances are are showing that robotaxis are gonna come, and I think that's gonna be the thing that are going to take people ditch their cars, sell their cars, and totally move to shared modes. And once they move to shared modes for their medium and long distance travels, we will have more room for micromobility to expand, because those people who sold their cars are gonna have shorter trips, and for shorter trips, we will be there. We will be ready there to serve them.
And my closing thought, because I didn't give it to you in the beginning, is that my favorite micromobility device is a traditional bike. And I took a bus at 5 a.m, and then the Eurostar, and then the train to get here. And why take an Uber when you can take a 5 a.m. bus with no traffic? Anyway, that's our panel. Thanks for coming. Hope everyone had a good time.